And we're back for another episode of the Mainly Hoops podcast. We had, as we had talked about in our last episode, some solid games over the weekend, headlined by UCLA and Gonzaga. Gonzaga entered that game. What did it close out? Like 4.5-point favorites. And this game was really a clashing of two styles. UCLA, a more defensive-minded team who wants to keep the possession count low and turn the game into a rock fight. Gonzaga, who wants to play at a fast pace, get downhill, kick to open shooters, play in transition. And UCLA's style won out in this game, right? UCLA turned this into a rock fight, low scoring game. Ended up being 65-62, probably going to be the lowest that Gonzaga scores all year. And UCLA came out with the win, right? That's a tough way for Gonzaga to play because that's not really their style. And UCLA was just physical with them. And Nembhard, he had a chance to tie it at the end with a free throw on an and one. And that brings up the point of, like, do you foul when you're up 3 so they don't even get a chance for that, right? Or do you make sure that, like, if you're going to foul him there, do you make sure that you foul him so hard that he can't get the shot off, right? Like, it's a unique situation, but I'm of the mindset of fouling up 3 in that situation. Like, if he starts to get something downhill, you just give a foul and make him go to the line and earn the points instead of getting something easy. But like I said, ultimately UCLA's style won out, and they were just a more physical team, and Gonzaga just doesn't like that style. So this is a really good win for UCLA.
Yeah, I mean, the whole foul up 3 thing, like, it might have been like a tad early to foul. I think he made the layup with like 9 or 10 seconds left. Like, you typically maybe want to foul like inside of 5, 6 in that range. But I think that's why he took that half court shot or the 3/4 court shot like 3 seconds early, was because he didn't want to get fouled there. So it just looked like a bad play on the surface, and like maybe it didn't seem like he was aware of how much time was left on the clock. But I think that's kind of what was going on there. But yeah, I mean, definitely the style that UCLA wanted to play. And it wasn't at the expense of like their star player, Gonzaga's star players playing bad. Like, EK had 24 and like he dominated a portion of this game in the pick and roll and in the post up game. But yeah, just kind of cut off everybody else. I mean, Nembhard finished with 16 as well, but nobody else was in double figures. I mean, 2 starters, Stromer and Ajayi didn't score. They 30 and 20 minutes apiece, went 0 for 4 combined from the field. So you got to get some extra points from guys. And obviously, Caleb Battle going out with the ejection. It was a pretty unfortunate flagrant 2, but kind of just got caught in the air and, grabbed, I forget who it was. I think it was Daly, grabbed him by the neck and brought him all the way down. So that definitely swung the game. Like, he would have been big in this game for the outside shooting that they didn't really have. And yeah, they just weren't able to get out in transition even when they did get stopped. So UCLA did a really nice job of preventing transition for like all 40 minutes here, really. Like, I didn't really see all that many runouts from Gonzaga in this game. So credit UCLA for playing at the pace that they wanted to. They didn't look necessarily great. Like, both teams turned the ball over a ton, and it's a super ugly game. And if you're going to play an ugly game, like, that's definitely what UCLA wants against the Zags.
Yeah. And to your point about Stromer, especially, he got a good look there down the stretch in that left corner, but it's hard to be asked to knock that shot down when you're probably not in a rhythm. You haven't gotten many shots over the course of the game, and that's kind of what he brings to them. But if you're not in a rhythm, that's a tough shot to knock down in that spot. But he did get a good look.
Yeah, he's kind of just been a bit underwhelming throughout his career. Like, coming in his freshman year, he was expected to be a knockdown shooter, and it just hasn't really been the case. Shot it a little bit better this year with extra guys around him. I think it really helps. But overall, throughout his career, I think he's been a bit of a disappointment, at least shooting wise.
Yeah, for sure. Another game from Saturday, Memphis hosted Ole Miss, who is kind of a fraud. Like, I don't, like we've talked about, they haven't beaten anybody yet. They're only quality team they've played against really is like Purdue, and they lost at the buzzer. And Purdue hasn't been very good either. So, they went and played at Memphis, and this game was never really that close. Memphis kind of just controlled the game right from the jump. They got up like 9-2 early and controlled it from there on out. So Memphis, maybe they're better than we think. They've played a tough schedule and they've done well. They've maintained, their top 25 ranking. But I know, like you say, they're going to find a way to screw it up.
Yeah, I mean, they're just going to play up. They're going to win these big games when they have to win big games. Like when they're motivated, they can beat. I'd say they can literally beat anyone in the country. They're that talented. Have elite front court talent as well in the scoring department. With Dane Danger, and Jordan can go get his own bucket as well in the front court. But Colby Rogers was a big time difference maker in this game after having two really bad games. He went and combined 1 for 19 before this game. He went 10 for 16 on 6 of 9 from 3. And he was a big factor. We talked about it before, like in the preview we had last week. He would have big time shots in this game with Ole Miss kind of loading up in the lane and kind of trying to keep you away from the rim. And he stepped up and he hit all the big shots that he needed to make. And yeah, that was certainly the biggest factor in this game. Also, Moussa Cisse was great. It was kind of a revenge game for him. He looked like he was bringing a little bit of extra motivation in this game after being at Ole Miss last year. It sounded like things didn't really end well there. So it did look like he was super motivated. He was all over the glass in this game. So yeah, he was great. Haggerty's continued to be great. He was a great playmaker in this game as well. But I do have like a few problems with Ole Miss. Like this isn't a Chris Beard defense at all. Like they don't really have the personnel. Like they kind of want to play like positionless, want to have like 6'6" to 6'8" across the board, like rangy wings, but they don't really have that, especially in the backcourt when you have Jalen Murray and Padula. As good as they are of shot makers, they kind of take away from what Beard wants to do defensively. And then when you add in guys on the front line like Malik Dia and Jamin Brakefield, who are clearly offensive players first, and they don't really move their feet well for their position. Like Brakefield's a 4-man who they're trying to play at the 5, and it just doesn't really work out. He doesn't move his feet well for a 4-man. And yeah, Dia is obviously just super offensive minded, definitely not a Chris Beard type defender. So I don't really think that's something that they get sorted out. I think they're going to have to lean on their shot making on the offensive side because they don't really do many other things well on the offensive end either. Like they take care of the ball, but they really don't get on the glass at all. Those are two Chris Beard staples, and they just seems like he's kind of trying to morph what his team wants to be. He's trying to morph the roster a bit and try to give his team more offensive upside, but it's at the expense of the defense not being top tier level like it was at Texas Tech.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that I think Beard, part of it is like this season coming into like the portal season, he wanted to just put his team in a situation to be able to compete, right? Get to March. And so he maybe didn't go after the exact guys that fit the mold of what he wants to do, right? Like Padula is not a Beard guy, but if he wanted to like win quickly with like a veteran team, and you're not going to win anything serious, but you might be able to make like a Sweet 16 run. That's probably part of his thinking there is like, okay, we can at least do something with the talent we can get in the portal. But like, I'm with you. This isn't like a staple, picture perfect Chris Beard type team.
Yeah, it's just tough to go away from your identity and like what makes you great as a coach. And he's obviously a super defensive minded coach. Him with Mark Adams on the bench as the assistant, like they've always had elite defenses back when they were at Tech together. And I understand he's trying to create more balance and just trying to go out and grab a bunch of top tier talent and see what happens, which at the end of the day, that's probably the way to go. I just think he grabbed a little bit too many shot making reliant oriented guys. So I think it's going to be kind of a long year in the SEC with, all of this athletic frontline teams like an Auburn, like was probably going to kill them on the glass. Like Tennessee is going to kill them on the glass because they play a little bit too small on the front line.
Yeah, no, I agree. We also had a couple of Mountain West games on Saturday that went down to the wire, especially at San Diego State. Utah State came back late, hit a big three there in the last minute or last 20 seconds, really, wasn't it? And won 67-66. So really quality win for Utah State here on the road. Never an easy place to go win at San Diego State.
Yeah, I mean, super impressive for them to come back from down. I think it was like 18 at one point. San Diego State's offense just really stalled out down the stretch. I think the zone kind of forced the Aztecs into some bad shots, especially late in that game. They were kind of just settling and taking some like off the dribble threes from 3 or 4 feet behind the line, and that's just not who they are. And like shot selection's always kind of been an issue with Dutcher coach teams, but typically the defense was able to carry them. But down the stretch, it really wasn't able to happen. And Ian Martinez and Falslev were great. Over 15 points apiece. So definitely credit to Utah State. They've been a huge surprise in the Mountain West. I think people expected them to be top 5, but they kind of look like the best team in the conference right now. I'm not really sure I'm willing to say that they're better than San Diego State just because of this game, but definitely a big time performance on the road early in conference play. They're sitting at 2-0 in the conference now, and they kind of control their own destiny if they can hold serve at home and win a couple more of these road games. And down the road, they're going to be looking at possibly another conference title.
Yeah, no, definitely. They showed some grit there in the second half and hit some big shots down the stretch to beat that San Diego State team, who they're not the same team as they've been in years past, but they've still proven to be better than we expected probably, and they still have a great coach. So, especially put that all together with the environment at Viejas, it's not an easy place to play. So, or to go win for that matter. So props to Utah State. Another Mountain West team, New Mexico, went on the road, took down Colorado State as underdogs. Another, quality win. This New Mexico team, they've had some ups and downs here early, right? Colorado State, this was a game that they really should have been looking to get, right? I mean, you're at home against a New Mexico team. That's good, but they've had their struggles, and if Colorado State wants to be a serious contender in this conference, which I think they are, right? They have their issues, but if they want to be a serious contender, like these are the types of games they need to win at home.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely expected a bit of a better effort in this game. The defense looked pretty bad, honestly. Like New Mexico was getting a ton of baskets off cuts. Donovan Dent kind of carved them up in pick and roll. It was a pretty ugly performance. Like Colorado State didn't look like they were bringing a ton of energy in this game either. Especially they got punched in the mouth early. Made a little bit of a run late or like middle of the second half, but ultimately it wasn't enough. They don't really have enough offensive firepower to afford to get down by 17 or 18 early in the game. So yeah, they're just playing from behind early and, didn't quite have enough to get back. These two teams, like I would consider them fairly even, honestly. Like New Mexico is like, they feel like a Memphis kind of to me. They can play up against a lot of teams, but they lose a rivalry game as a 20-point favorite to New Mexico State. They allowed San Jose State to keep it close against them. Like they definitely. They beat UCLA early in the year, like second game of the year, big time performance. They have a ton of talent, but they tend to play down to competition. So I wouldn't be surprised if they got dropped down a little bit as conference season went on. But yeah, in this game, they have a great win on the road, especially at Colorado State. It's tough to win on the road in this conference. So, credit to even Utah State and New Mexico getting wins this weekend.
Yeah, no, definitely. A couple other games just to quickly note. Game you were at, Maine and BU. Maine kind of squandered a lead that they had, ended up losing the second half 40-29 and lost the game 59-56.
Yeah, I just wanted to note it just because I was at the game. But despite them losing, like this is the first time I've seen them since like I went to the school, I went to UMaine, so I watched a lot of men's games while I was there. But it's just a night and day difference between the culture that the former coach brought, the name escapes me before Markwood got there. But and between that and Markwood, like the defensive identity is ridiculous. I mean, the perimeter defense was spectacular, especially in the first half of that game. You know, Kellen Tynes and Clayton were spectacular. Just the offense late in the game wasn't able to get there, but I'm impressed from what I saw from the Black Bears, and yeah, I expect them to make some noise, possibly in the America East.
Yeah, no, that'd be exciting. Been a while. So another game to quickly mention: Georgia was down 17 at the half to South Carolina State, but a big second half led them to a 7-point victory.
Yeah, I didn't really catch any of this game. I just happened to see the score at halftime. They were down 17. Was very surprising. Like, it just shows like these games after Christmas are so weird, and like you don't really know what's going to happen with the lack of fans, and like you could get caught sleeping. But yeah, they ended up winning the second half by like 25 or 26 to get it done. Like, this would have been a really bad loss on the resume. Like, you get caught sleeping against a team like South Carolina State. Like, it'll haunt you on Selection Sunday, and Georgia's kind of in the mix to get there, especially if they have a solid conference season.
Yeah, no, for sure. So good for them for coming back. That could have been detrimental to them moving forward. We've got some better games this week. Big 12 conference play started up today. Kansas State kicked it off with a big win against Cincinnati. We'll get into some of the other games coming up this week. But before we do that, I wanted to go through, we had our early season, preseason predictions for conference champions, but now after, we're into conference play or getting ready to start conference play, we wanted to reevaluate, see where some of those are at and make any tweaks. So I'll let you start it off, Cody, in the Big 12. I think early in the season we had thought Kansas was the team, but now it seems like it's more open than that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a 3-horse race between Houston, Iowa State, and Kansas. I just prefer Houston just because the floor is so high, and I think they're getting a little bit too much hate for like the 3 losses they took. Like, they lost 2 of them in overtime to solid teams. Like, losing to Bama in overtime is nothing to really like get super worried about. And you lose to San Diego State in a defensive battle. Like, it's a high variance game when both teams are, like elite defenses, so super hard to score on. But yeah, I prefer Houston. I think like even last year, like they go on the road and they just dominate some teams. And like currently, as we're recording, they're dominating Oklahoma State. I mean, obviously they're a bottom Big 12 team, but I mean, if you can win road games in conference at a high rate, you're definitely going to be the favorite. I believe they went like 7-2 in Big 12 road games last year. So yeah, that'll be my pick to win the Big 12.
Yeah, no, I don't think Kansas. I'm not going to say I don't think Kansas can win it because their teams always get better. But like if I had my pick right now, even though we have Kansas, or the AP poll has Kansas where at like 7 or 8. I think it's Iowa State or Houston. Really, I think Kansas has a lot of flaws, and I think they'll get better by season's end because they always do. But I'm not too sold on them. At least for this season, I think they have too many issues, and the offensive firepower is not exactly there. So I'm going to go with Iowa State. I think that it's just really hard to win at Iowa State. I think they're going to fare very well at home, and then they'll pick up enough wins on the road to ultimately win this conference. But I wouldn't be surprised to see any of those 3 teams win, just because of Bill Self's history of just his teams getting better, and it's obviously super hard to win at Allen Fieldhouse. So I wouldn't be surprised to see any of the 3.
Yeah, for sure. I wouldn't be surprised. Like, one team that I wouldn't be surprised to see like get into the conversation is Texas Tech. Like, they have one of the best home courts in the entire country, and they haven't really been super healthy this year, and they don't really have a marquee win. So nobody's really talking about them right now. But once they get JT Toppin and Federico back on the floor, and like those are the really only solid frontline pieces that they have for like rim protection standpoint. Like, they're elite on both ends. They rebound super well, but they have a ton of shooting on this roster. and the point guard play is solid with McMillan and Hawkins. So I wouldn't be surprised if they made a run up through the Big 12 and possibly crept their way into the top 3.
Yeah, no, I agree. Now the next conference is the SEC, and early in the year we kind of thought it was Alabama's to lose. They've obviously had their fair share of issues. Latrell Wright's out for the year. Amorier hasn't looked exactly, as they'd hoped, but that could change in certain matchups, I think, in the SEC. But I also think there are other matchups where, we'll continue to see much of the same of, him not being able to stay on the court because of foul trouble or just how other teams are playing. So I think we're probably in agreement here that Auburn is the team right now. They're the best team in the country in our eyes. I know the AP poll doesn't see it that way for whatever reason, but I think Auburn's the best team.
Yeah, the AP poll just sees a 0 next to Tennessee's name in the loss column, and they put them as the number 1 team. Doesn't really make much sense to me. Like, Auburn clearly has the best resume in the country. Like, yeah, they lost on the road to Duke, but every single team in the country is going on the road and losing to Duke. Like, it's pretty simple to understand. And clearly the AP, the voters don't really seem to understand that concept. But I do think Auburn wins, but I think it's wide open. Like, there's so many teams that can win in this conference. Like, it's so deep all the way down. And like, Auburn could win this conference and end up with 6 losses. Like, that wouldn't surprise me at all. Like, they probably will have at least 3 or 4 just because of, who they have to play. Like, they have to go on the road and play. Like, they'll have to play Tennessee. They'll have to play Alabama. They'll have to play Kentucky, Florida. Like, it's just ridiculous. But for like a flyer, I would take Texas A&M. I think they're another team that can go win games on the road at a high rate because they offensive rebound the ball so well, and they take care of the ball. And they have a strong defensive identity with Buzz Williams. They can turn over anybody in the country. Obviously, the shot making can, make them susceptible to losing to the bottom of the conference. But every team in this conference is solid. But they have the ability to punch up against any team in the entire country, and they've shown that. Like, even in the last couple tournaments, like, they almost beat Houston in the tournament as like a 10-point dog, took them to overtime. Like, it just goes to show how much upside they really have.
Yeah, I don't hate that pick. Obviously, you guys know how I hate on Wade Taylor for his inefficient shot making, but he's also capable of getting hot. So, who knows? Texas A&M's a tough place to go win, but I think Texas A&M will struggle on the road their fair share. But I guess like they could, but that's why they're a dark horse. In the ACC, this is another one that's probably unanimous. Duke, not a ton that needs to be probably said about them. We've talked about them a bunch, just the defensive upside, the offensive game growing, just all the versatility that they have on the court, not to mention like a very weak ACC conference this year. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Duke doesn't lose a home ACC game this year and, maybe lose a couple on the road. I don't know. They're going to be, if I had to guess, they'll be favorites in probably every game. So I think it's just pretty cut and dry. It's Duke's to lose.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if they were a dog in any game. Like, they should probably be an over possession favorite, even on the road against like North Carolina or Clemson. Yeah, it's theirs to lose, but I don't think the offense has really completely come along yet. Maybe that's going to happen down the road throughout the conference season, but the defense is elite. It's a top 3 unit in the entire country. So I wouldn't be surprised if they ran the table. Like, it would be like a bit surprising to, go 20-0 in a conference, in a power conference, but going like 18-2 wouldn't shock me in the slightest. But I mean, there's one team down the board a little bit that might have a chance, possibly to like go up over Clemson and North Carolina for that second spot. And that's Pittsburgh. They haven't really been super healthy. They lost Damian Dunn a little while ago, but I like the guard play. I like Lowe. I like Ish Leggett, and I like this defense overall. There's a lot of versatility. The versatility is led by Zach Austin. He's been pretty good this year, and he's shooting the ball a lot better. So I think those guys definitely have a chance to work their way up the board here, and they go find a way to get to 14-6, 15-5, and like give themselves a chance. But obviously, it's Duke's to win. But that's just my one flyer I would take.
Yeah, I don't hate that. In the Big East now, again, I've reiterated this several times. I still think it's UConn's conference to lose until further notice. Like Marquette's obviously good. St. John's has its issues, but they can give some teams some trouble. Villanova's coming along a little bit, unfortunately. But UConn, I think they're just too well coached, too fundamentally sound. They get the best shots of, between the two teams every night. They get the better shots. I think it's UConn's to lose.
Yeah, I actually agree. I do think it's UConn. I've been saying it's Marquette. I've been super back and forth on that, but I do think Marquette is susceptible to losing to some of the bottom teams in this conference with like their lack of scoring talent across the board. Like if you can shut down Cam Jones, I think you can have a decent chance of winning a game at home against Marquette. So yeah, I definitely prefer UConn for the balance that they have. And I mean, my dark horse would be Villanova, just because their offense is kind of elite now. They shoot the crap out of the ball, and they really get on the offensive glass. They're like top 20 in offensive rebound rate, and I believe they're top 20 in 3-point shooting percentage right now. So been pretty impressive. Obviously, the defense has its things it needs to work out, but if they figure that out, like they have a chance if they catch some breaks throughout. But overall, it's a 3-horse race between UConn, Marquette, and St. John's, who, like you said, has their issues.
Yeah, no, I agree. And unfortunately, like I kind of have to agree on Villanova. They have looked a lot better, and their offense has been really good, led by Eric Dixon, who's leading the country in scoring. So, I guess I'll have to give them the nod as a dark horse as well, unfortunately. And also, the last like power conference, I guess, is the Big Ten. And right now, this conference is, like we said early in the season, it's wide open. Our preseason pick was Purdue. They haven't been very good. For me, I'm probably on Illinois. I think that they have their turnover issues, but I think they have the highest upside. I think they have the highest upside player in Yakachonis. He's not afraid of any moment. He's hit big shots at home, on the road, tight games, and appears to not be shying away from those. So I think that's what you need, especially on the road in this conference where most of the environments are going to be tough and, really packed in and loud, hard places to win. But I don't think it really is phasing him all that much. So I'm gonna side with Illinois. I think they're capable of winning a bunch of games on the road, and obviously I think they're going to do well at home too. So I'm gonna rock with Illinois for right now.
Yeah, I like Illinois too. I think they have the most balance, and I think they have the most upside in the conference. Like with the combo of Yakachonis and Ivisic, I think they can do some pretty big things. I think down the road, come March, I wouldn't be surprised if they were, a bit of a sleeper to possibly make it to a Final Four, like we talked about a little bit. So, but another team that has started to grow on me a little bit is Michigan State. The offense looks pretty good. They're playing a lot of 2 big lineups now to kind of optimize their offensive rebounding ability. Plus, the guard play is kind of coming along. They had their fair share of turnover issues early in the year, and they weren't really shooting it well. They were shooting it well below what they were expected to shoot it. Like Akins and Holloman and Fiddler were all shooting it really bad, but they've started to figure some things out there. And if they start to hit shots at a much higher clip, I think this offense actually has like a pretty high ceiling, which is a little bit different than what Izzo teams could say the last couple of years. Yeah, especially the 2 big lineup has been big. Like they have 5 different bigs that they can throw on the floor, and the defense is always great. So I would take a chance on Michigan State possibly winning the conference, just because like teams at the top right now, especially at the top of the odds boards to win the conference, like Michigan and UCLA, like those are complete fades for me. I don't really understand why they're at the top, despite them being 2-0 in the conference to start the year. Like we talked about it. The West Coast teams, I think, have a disadvantage outside of getting to play Washington and USC twice. UCLA and Oregon have that luxury, but they have to travel to the East Coast almost every single weekend, or half the weekends at least. And that's a major travel disadvantage. And some of those teams obviously have to go out to the West Coast, but I think it benefits the East Coast teams way more.
Yeah, I agree. I think that some of those West Coast teams are going to struggle for a number of reasons. They don't have the home court advantage that some of these other schools in the Big Ten have, but also like if they're having to travel away from home for like a Tuesday night game, but then turn right back around and have a home game on like Friday or Saturday, flying across the country and back, it's really tough. Whereas, they might fly to, Illinois and play a game, but their opponent that they're playing on Saturday is already out there playing Oregon and then is just flying down to UCLA, so the advantage is really with that team that is already over there. So I think it's going to cause some potential problems there. So, I like some of those West Coast teams more in a tournament setting, but, I think in the regular season, they're going to struggle at times.
Yeah. I mean, I think UCLA and Oregon pretty damn good teams, but it's just the fact that they have to travel way more. They have to put way more miles on it this season. So definitely just prefer another team or like an original Big Ten team.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I know there were a few teams you wanted to throw out there in the American Conference in the A10 quickly. So who are you looking at in the American? I know you've kind of talked about them a little bit before, but
yeah, I've talked about fading Memphis for the most part, and the team that I would like to fade them with is FAU. I mean, I think they have a ton of offensive upside. They actually play Memphis on Thursday it's a huge game. They're going to have to play them again down the road, but this win would go a long way into like deciding who wins the conference because their schedule is pretty fortunate outside of that. So yeah, I definitely just prefer FAU, mostly just because Memphis is so, Jekyll and Hyde throughout the course of a conference season. Like they had the most talented team in the league last year and they went 11-7. So yeah. And obviously FAU just has the most upside.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that. I mean, Memphis a year in and year out they still haven't won the conference with Penny, right? And they continue to just let down in the conference. So we'll see what ends up happening there. As for the A10, Dayton's kind of been the team, VCU kind of right behind them. But you have another team on your radar as a dark horse.
Yeah, if I had to pick one team, it would be Dayton. But I was looking into the schedules a little bit for the A10, and Dayton and VCU have probably the worst or the short end of the stick here with their scheduling. They have to play each other twice. They have to play St. Louis twice, and I forget who the third team. VCU has to play Bonaventure twice, but they're in like super bad scheduling spots. They have to go on the road and play some of the top half teams in the A10. So I actually prefer St. Bonaventure just because I think they're probably the third best team in this conference. They arguably have the best defense in the conference. They get to match up. Bonaventure gets to match up with VCU at home tomorrow. So that's a game that would go a long way in deciding this. And they have a pretty fortunate schedule besides that. They play Dayton at home. That's the only game that they have to play Dayton. And most of the teams in the top half, the Bonnies get them at home. So I just think it's mostly due to scheduling, but they also have like a ton of defensive upside. They have a ton of length across the board. And I think they have a real chance to, take home the regular season title.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now to wrap things up, we're going to go through a few game previews for the week. Leading it off with St. John's at Creighton. St. John's traveling on the road. We saw them struggle a little bit on the road at Providence, wound up coming back, but now they're going to Creighton, who beat a Kansas team at Creighton. Granted, Pop Isaacs, that was his last game of the year, but they're much better at home than they are on the road, and they're especially with the team that they have now. So this will be, I think, another good road test to see where St. John's is really at. Because I still haven't like fully bought into the St. John's hype.
Yeah, I haven't really bought into the offensive hype just yet. Just because, I mean, one factor, like not having Brady Dunlap, I think is pretty significant. But in this game, like Creighton, they try to take away 3-point shooters. St. John's doesn't really have any. They don't really like to get into spot up opportunities all that often. Like they like to live in pick and roll, live in the mid range, and Creighton's going to give that to them. So I actually think St. John's has an advantage on the offensive side, and I think St. John's overall athleticism can give Creighton's guards some pretty big issues. Like Ashworth is not super great with the ball. He doesn't have the best handle. So I do think they can turn him over quite a bit, along with they don't really have any other creation outside of him. So I actually kind of expect St. John's to go on the road and get a win, despite it. I mean, it's tough to win in Omaha. Like, obviously, it's the furthest place away for these Big East teams to go travel to. So, but at the end of the day, I still like St. John's.
Yeah, I would say I like St. John's too. I think Creighton has too many issues, and Kalkbrenner would just have to be a hero in this game, I think, or Ashworth would have to knock down like 6 or 7 threes, which I don't foresee. I think the St. John's guards are going to be able to be physical with him and like make him put it on the deck, and create something, and get to the hole. So. I like St. John's in this game, but I kind of expect a closer game.
For sure, me too. And like Creighton's been kind of experimenting with a few too many different lineup combos in the front court. Like I just don't think they have it figured out. They've been playing a lot more Jason Green as opposed to Trout, and they've just been kind of switching all of those lineups throughout the season. And it just goes to show that they don't really have anything figured out there.
Yeah, which I think may continue to be the case. So another game, another Mountain West game, Utah State on the road again at Nevada, another big road test for them. And to me, this feels like a letdown spot for them. Nevada, another really good team. You're going on the road for a second straight game. You just won a big one on the road at San Diego State. This feels like a classic letdown spot following that kind of a win and going to play a good Nevada team. So I'm going to side with Nevada here to pick up a home win.
Yeah, Nevada needs this win bad. They started 0-2 in the conference. Utah State started 2-0 and their last 2 wins have been unbelievable wins on the road at St. Mary's and then on the road at San Diego State. Like, you can't really find many better road wins this season. But I'm still fairly high on this Nevada team, and I think they can keep Utah State away from the rim and keep them out of transition, which is the 2 top areas that Utah State really likes to get into. So yeah, I think Nevada's just going to win this game in a desperation spot, and I think they can shoot their way over the top of the zone that Utah State likes to run. It's a bit funky, but I do think they have enough shooting to cut through this zone a bit.
Yeah. No, I agree for sure. They need this one, like you said. Now another one, we have UNC at Louisville. And I believe I saw, I don't know if it's still accurate, but the projected spread on this game, I think, was Louisville favored by like a basket. Is that?
Yeah, I think it was like 3. I don't think we're going to get that, but
no, I
like UNC to win on the road.
Yeah, I do too. I think that, I think they're starting to figure some things out in terms of like rotation, at least in the backcourt. They were without Trimble last night, and Ian Jackson started, and he was awesome again, had 26. He's been really, really good. So I expect him to continue to play high minutes and just kind of let him rock, because he's, their most explosive player right now.
Yeah, and Louisville's probably going to let UNC off the hook too by taking a million threes in this game and not really exposing the Tar Heels on the interior like you can. And like Louisville doesn't really have like a dominant force anymore. Like, you lose Case and Pryor, and they kind of lost a lot of value on both sides of the ball when he got hurt. Their turnover rate's gone way down, and overall, like, that's kind of what they lived off defensively. So they're starting to kind of reel. They had to win at the buzzer against Eastern Kentucky at home on Saturday. And in a fast-paced game, like, I wouldn't be surprised if this one gets away from Louisville a little bit. Like, that's the type of game that UNC wants to play. and they take care of the ball at a pretty high level. So Louisville's not really going to be able to create a ton of value defensively, and I think the Tar Heels can run away with it. Although it's tough to win on the road and in a power conference, but I do like the Heels to win.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it is tough to win on the road, but I do think that they win. I think they get, a much needed quality win on the road in ACC play, and I think it's behind more electrifying play from Ian Jackson and RJ Davis's experience, and just him getting back to what they need him to be. So I like the Tar Heels as well. Then the final game, Illinois at Oregon. This is a game I'm really interested in because I want to see how Oregon is at home in conference against, a team coming from the East, and especially Illinois, who we've kind of picked to be our champion in this conference. This will be a good test for them. Like Oregon, of those three schools out there that, Washington, UCLA, I guess USC too. Like Oregon to me has always been like the toughest place of those, just because it's like the court was always funky, and they sometimes drew a crowd, and Oregon just played a unique style of defense that that was like, it was always tough to go play there, it felt like. So of those places out there, I think that this one is probably the toughest. So I'll be interested. Do you know if there's a projected line on this one yet?
I haven't seen anything. I'd say Oregon's probably a short favorite.
Yeah.
2-point favorite if I had to guess.
I don't really, at this point, I don't really have a lean on which way I'd go on this one. It's really hard to say. By default, I'd probably side with the home team, but I don't think that being on the road really phases. Oregon's minus 2.5 projected. So, I don't think going on the road has really phased this Illinois team too much. Like they lost at Northwestern, but they showed, that they can make big shots. So I wouldn't be surprised to see this game go either way.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how this game's going to go, honestly. It'll be interesting to see how a team does going out west to go, play one of these teams, especially playing Oregon. Like, you go to USC and Washington, it's kind of a joke of a place to play at. Like USC has no environment at all. Washington's is probably a little bit better, but yeah, going in this travel spot, it's definitely tough for Illinois, but I'd like to lean their way just because I don't really think what Oregon's doing is sustainable. Like we've talked about it, they've been pretty fortunate to be where they're at right now. They have so many double-digit comebacks, especially early in the year, that I just think the luck kind of comes back to bite them at some point. It did a little bit against UCLA at the buzzer, but I still think there's a little bit more like negative regression coming their way from a luck standpoint. So I'll side with Illinois just because if I have to pick a team, I'd go with them, but wouldn't be surprised either way.
Yeah, no, I'll probably side with the home team for right now, but I could easily probably change my tune come Thursday. I don't really know which way this is going to go. So that's a game that I'm excited to see. Illinois traveling to the West Coast for the first time, right? So that should be fun. But we're finally into like actual conference play. Big 12 conference started today, as I said. Not a ton of great games early in the week for them quite yet, but they're coming. The Cincinnati and Kansas State game was a good one, but we'll start to get some more good ones in the SEC starting up this week too. In our next episode, we'll be talking about some of those games coming up this weekend.
Yeah, definitely exciting for conference play to come around. I've been getting kind of sick of the bye games and stuff. So definitely excited for some really good games, some really, really good Saturday slates. I think there's like 140 games on Saturday. So it's going to be a bit overwhelming, but pretty exciting overall.
Yeah, no doubt. Sensory overload. But other than that, hope you guys enjoy the games this week. Should be a bunch of good ones, starting to get some better games, as Cody said. No more bye games or fewer of them. So enjoy the games. We'll have a best bets episode coming out as well, and we'll talk to you in the next episode.